This is Keys to the Shop, episode 394. Happy Coffee People with Wendelien van Bunnik. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFurio. I'm your host for the show. Really excited to have you along today. And really quick, if you would subscribe to the show just by hitting the button that says subscribe wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast, it makes a huge difference in people's ability to find the show because of its ranking. And it just gives us a really good idea of who's listening. And the bonus here is that you get to be updated with new content as it comes out. About 10 episodes a month of Keys to the Shop, giving you really actionable, practical takeaways and insights for your business and career. So again, hit subscribe and also share these episodes and share the show with your team and with your friends. Get them familiar with Keys to the Shop, and that's a great way to help Keys to the Shop as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. Now, Keys to the Shop is not just a podcast, but it's also a coaching and consulting company. Keys to the Shop Consulting is all about helping you either start your business on the right foot by laying great foundations for sustainability and thriving and finding joy in the process of owning a coffee shop, but it also walks alongside of existing business owners who, through one-on-one coaching and cafe assessments, we get to provide a lot of clarity for next steps in refining and taking things to the next level with your operations, your quality, and your people, whether you're scaling your business or there are really specific problems or challenges that you're experiencing that you need some help with. Keys to the Shop Consulting can come alongside you and provide you with the insights, clarity, and tools to help you do just that. So it'd be great to talk with you no matter where you are in your coffee journey. Let's have a conversation. To have a free strategy call, go ahead and email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. And when you reach out, we'll set up that call and find out how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Again, that email for Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, as the weather gets better, people start really coming out a little bit more. They really are looking at finding something that's unique, finding something that is not just the ordinary experience before, but something that's going to just open their eyes to possibilities. And in coffee, of course, this is flavor. We want people to be astounded by the great stories and complexities of the coffees we serve. And one of the things that we can use to get that kind of story across on the customer's palate is a piece of equipment called the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer. The Cyclops Brewer from Ground Control is amazing in that it uses SCA award-winning technology to give you control over an incredible depth and range of flavors in your coffee. The extraction capabilities are simply amazing. It's like getting to know your coffee all over again with the Ground Control. It's really leveling up what you can expect from batch brewers. But it's not only an amazing next level batch brewer, it also makes tea, batched iced lattes, batched cold brew, batch espresso for catering events, and there's all sorts of applications that customers of the Ground Control have used it for bringing more profitability and higher quality. So check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee to find out more about this amazing company and this machine and how it can benefit your company. If you're looking for the best coffee machine to use in really representing your coffee to your customers, I highly recommend you get a Ground Control brewer for your store. For more information, again, check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee. Pouring drinks is what we do. This is the life of a barista. This is what customers see your baristas do all day long. And baristas are very aware of the details of the products that they use. And for this reason, baristas all over the world prefer products that are created with them in mind. Products like the Barista series from Pacific, which is the plant-based performance beverage that is designed for baristas and tested by baristas before it reaches the shelf in your cafe. And that's why baristas love using this, because it stands up to the heat from steaming, produces excellent latte art ready texture, and it keeps the balance of the beverage focused on the coffee itself. And so it does truly perform on the bar, and your plant-based customers don't need to sacrifice any quality in their drinks for substituting plant-based for regular. And that's the wonderful thing about this. So check them out at pacificfoodservice.com for more information. Get samples in your store and try it today. Again, if you're looking for the best plant-based beverages to serve your customers and one your baristas are going to love using, you definitely need to be using the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today we have such an amazing conversation ready for you. It is one of my favorite conversations that I've had on our show. And I'm not saying that because I really want you to be excited about this one and then I'm going to say that about the next one and next one. I truly have been thinking about this ever since having this conversation. And I 100% back up that statement because it covers such a deep and important foundational element of developing your career. And that is the idea of finding your place, finding your voice, and creating happiness and joy in the journey of professional coffee work. And this is the thing that sustains us, or if we don't have it, it is the thing that drives us into the ground and creates burnout. And that's exactly the kind of story that we're going to hear today from our guest, Wendelien van Bunnik. Wendelien van Bunnik is the 2019 Dutch Barista Champion, Dutch AeroPress, and World AeroPress Champion. She started her career in coffee in 2010 and has competed in coffee competitions since 2011. She started her career as a barista. After 3 years, she was employed at a Dutch specialty coffee roastery. And here she was responsible for wholesale training, education for over 9 years. And she started her own business in 2021 as an AST trainer, training and consulting. And though her career is based on training and consultation, the chances are better that you know Wendelien from her very humorous and relatable content that she shares on her Instagram account at Wendelien Drinks Coffee. She is also the founder of the Happy Coffee Network, which is an open, welcoming community space on an online platform, and it launches March of 2023. And the network is a friendly online place for baristas to connect, share experiences and knowledge, and as well as provide access to resources and support, no matter what their level of coffee skill. And it's this reason that I finally wanted to get Wendelien on the show. And I've been following Wendelien's Instagram account at Wendelien Drinks Coffee for quite a long time. As I said to her before we started recording, it's always seemed like this oasis. It's humorous, it's joyful, there's a bit of a refreshment that happens. And this is the kind of thing that you want coffee itself to do, right? And so how do we get that? And how did she get there? And what's behind this Happy Coffee Network that she's just started? And what's led to the founding of this? This is the kind of thing we're going to be talking about with Wendelien on the show today. And I think you can see yourself at various stages of her career. And the topics that we discuss here not only are relatable, but I think her thoughts on them are transformative. So open your hearts and minds, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation about happiness and coffee with Wendelien van Bunnik. Wendelien, hello. Welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you today?
Hi, Chris. I'm really good. It's sunny. I get the first signs of spring outside. It's a good day.
You know, one of the things that I love about the fact that we get to have this conversation is I love getting to highlight people who are kind of a highlight in and of themselves. And then when I see your content online with coffee and AeroPress recipes and all of this stuff, it's always very cheering, I think. And it's always kind of refreshing. And maybe you get that a lot from people, but it feels like kind of a respite in coffee content.
Oh, thank you. That is a huge compliment to start off with. You're actually making me blush. I I'm pretty like bubbly, high energetic, cheerful person. I'm like quite positive myself. I really like making jokes and people have a sense of humor. So, yeah, I think just because I'm being myself, apparently that resonates with people who like, the lighter side in life as well. I always say that I take coffee very seriously, but myself not too much.
That's good. And yeah, and this is not a small statement, I think, coming from somebody who is a champion competitor. You know, you're a world AeroPress champion, you're Dutch barista champion, and a lot of people, and I've known throughout my career, you as a person become your career, right? If you were a bubbly personality when you started, just wait. You're going to get more gruff and not as cheerful. So good on you for maintaining that.
I mean, for me, the journey has been the other way around, actually. When I started, I thought I had to be like very serious and very professional and very composed and whatever that meant. And I really struggled with that. And the more I learned and the more I grew, both professionally and personally, I felt like the more I became myself, the easier things got. And yeah, the more I could relax. And, apparently if I'm more myself, then I'm more of a, positive, happy, cracking jokes kind of person. Yeah. My journey was definitely the other way around. The more I started trying so hard to be this professional side, whatever that was, the easier things got for me and the better things started going.
Ah, that's good. And you paid attention to that. You're like, yeah, I should do this more often, this direction of development, right?
It makes a lot of sense in the personal work that I was doing, like why at a certain point in my career I was like struggling and everything was difficult and felt heavy. I was like, why is this so hard? Like, is it supposed to be this hard? I think this is something that maybe some people recognize. And then I started realizing, like, what if I just stop trying so hard? Stop trying so hard to live up to this idea that I think people have of me or what I should be doing as a professional, as a coffee person, to be taken seriously, and just, start enjoying things a bit more and just try to, do it my own way and see where that ends up.
How long have you been in coffee professionally?
Since I think 2010.
Okay.
So yeah, 13 years, heading towards 14.
Wow. Very good career. And when you first started, I imagine, all of these epiphanies about, who you were going to determine to be in the industry were not as necessarily strong because you're just learning the industry. So you had to be under the tutelage of somebody, the trainers and other people like that. How did this journey start for you in terms of developing yourself professionally? And when did you become a little bit more in the driver's seat of your career?
That's an excellent question. I started out as a barista the first 3 years of my career, where I really, worked behind a bar in 3 different shops. And I really learned how much I liked the hospitality trade, like how much I liked interacting with customers, how much I liked making coffee. I really, really loved the work as a barista. And then from there, I started working at a coffee roastery under the wings of a mentor that had, shaped me in great ways and in some terrible ways as well. And for 9 years at that roastery with that particular mentor, that really shaped me a lot, because that was my first full-time job. I was working as a salesperson and as a trainer, and later on as head of education there. And also the last 2 years that I worked there, they also added bar manager. They opened their own flagship store, so I got the added responsibility of running their flagship store as well, on top of the training for their wholesale customers. And yeah, that was, I think, the last 2 to 3 years that I was working for that roastery, when I started noticing that things, as a protege of a mentor that was still very much attached to that mentor role, things became a bit more problematic, because I felt the strong need to like spread my wings, to, be more independent. And if those things don't line up, then things become challenging for both parties, which is why I left after a certain period. And it was time to go my own way. And I think from that moment on, once I left that employment and I started, going out into the coffee world on my own as a freelancer, as a freelance coffee trainer, as an AST, and doing just freelance jobs, that was the first time when I started really taking control of my own choices professionally. That was completely new as well, because on the one hand, the last couple of years that I was working at that roastery, I felt like a teenager who was rebelling against their parents who were keeping them or trying to protect them from the big world. And then I had what I wanted once I left. Then it turns out that the world is pretty scary, and it is, as a teenager, you don't want that you think you don't want the responsibility, or you think you do, and then you have it, and then you're like, oh, but I don't want the consequences. So that was that was quite a steep learning curve throughout those 13 years for sure. And every period, I think, was super valuable, from the years as a barista to the first years at that roastery, where I was like learning to become a professional and kind of unlearning what I thought I knew when I started that job. Because when I started working at that roastery full time, I thought I knew what a professional was, what a coffee professional was, what I was supposed to be doing. And because of the patience of that mentor, I, got reset. He put my 2 feet back on the ground and said, okay, this is what it means to be humble. That sometimes you need to know when not to talk, because I was still in that, super enthusiastic barista stage where I thought that everyone, deserved my opinion. And, so it was, even though maybe at the end I may have stayed at that company too long, it did teach me everything that I needed to know to do what I do now. So I wouldn't change a single thing, not one lesson, I think.
Wow. When you mentioned this, like the teenager and, now the real world hits you and you're like, oh, you realize that there's so many unseen protections under the banner of, maybe in this case, it was the company being a wholesale trainer. And I've done that myself. There's this compartment that you're in where it's easy to operate in there and get this kind of a false sense of security around your own self and not realizing that part of it's from just all of the work that's gone before you. But in your youth, you kind of think it's because of me, obviously. I'm the reason why this is all working. Yeah, there's a bit of a humbling that happens when you step out and you realize that, no, there was a lot of support. And now you kind of take a bunch of steps back and you have to really put roots down into who you are and not just rely on who the company was. And I like how you said that there's a professional vision of what a coffee professional should be. And then there's this other one. Like you had these two images, like this is what I thought it was like and what it should be. And here's the other thing that is reality. I wonder if you could dig into that a little bit and say, what was your perception of what a professional was, apparently wrong? And then what was the actuality that you wanted to steer towards and start to invest into?
When I started at my first full-time job, I thought that being a professional was being, first of all, being very composed, dressing the part, looking presentable, acting presentable, and most of the time, well, at least always being in charge. So being the expert at all times, always know what you're talking about, and always have the answers. And that gave me so much pressure on my shoulders because I was comparing myself to, for instance, my mentor who'd been in the industry for like 15 years longer than me. And I was trying to copy his ways, and he was encouraging me to, be an act and become a professional. And I thought, well, I'll just look at you and try to do what you do, not realizing that he's a completely different person and, quite some years older and more experienced and already learned how to find a work-life balance, where for me it was my first full-time job, coming straight from college. And the pressure that I felt to have all the answers all the time and have things figured out and have things, knowing how to behave all the time and the right way. Like there was only, in my head, there was only one way that I should be acting, which was probably the way my mentor would act. And there was no room for error whatsoever. So the amount of pressure that I put on myself, not wanting to disappoint myself, but also not my managers and my mentor, that amount of pressure that built up, leading to, obvious burnout after like 2 to 3 years. And that was when the real work began, because then I realized, okay, so that clearly didn't work. I'm not the same person as my mentor, even though he told me this on a daily basis, like, don't try to do the same as me. Like, I'm not expecting you to do the same hours as I do. He just wanted me to find my own way. But since I had no idea what that was and he couldn't tell me,
Sure.
yeah, that took a lot of pressure and which ultimately led to a rock bottom. From there on, I started like tuning more into, okay, so if that doesn't work, what does? Finding more my own personal route. So the more I found my own way, the more I outgrew that mentor protege relationship, ultimately causing it to, separate ways. So
A lot of people hear rock bottom or they get rock bottom, right? They have burnout from just striving in a structure that doesn't work for them, but they want it to work so bad. And they just leave coffee. They don't like search for a different way. They just say, screw coffee. I'm not, this industry sucks. These people suck. And I'm just going to, and I know that's not exactly the case with you, but for a lot of people, when they've reached burnout, they don't really have a lot of energy left to invest into or in, optimism for maybe there's a different way, What was it about coffee in the industry that made you believe that there was a different direction you could go that was more fulfilling than the one that you had been going down?
I never stopped loving coffee and I never stopped learning about coffee. I just somehow felt the pressure that I wasn't allowed to keep learning because I felt like I was supposed to already have all the answers, which automatically means that, you're done learning. And all I wanted to do is admit that there was so much that I didn't know. And there was that because it was that curiosity that caused me to get into coffee full time in the first place. Like I could have done something with the education that I did. I studied English language and literature, and I was ready to become an English teacher. And I could have started, teaching English, and I didn't because I knew that coffee was going to kind of help me feed that curiosity that I was feeling during my part-time job as a barista. And I knew that the fact that with coffee, I could keep learning and keep asking questions and keep getting those questions answered. Like that journey was so much more appealing to me. For some reason, that was more calming to me than that secure route of going into teaching, like becoming an English teacher and that set path. And that curiosity and still being able to learn, and the company that I was working for still had all these opportunities for me to keep learning and to keep searching for those questions and to, find different ways to develop myself. They were really supportive when I was ready to return after some like time of rest and recovery to say like, okay, so if that was too much pressure or that was too difficult, what else can we offer you to help you find a place in this company where you can shine? And we literally, over the next couple of years, tried every single position that we had in such a small specialty coffee roastery to find a place for me to really do that thing that I'm best at. But then the other problem was I wasn't sure what that was. So they kept asking me like, okay, so what is it that you want to do that you think that would make you feel good and happy in your career? And I just wasn't sure. And looking back at it, I don't know if that was ever going to be possible at a coffee roastery.
Yeah. I'm really curious about this. Funny enough, ironically, as we talk about curiosity, a curiosity implies that there's questions, right? So immediately you have admitted by being curious that you don't know. and so we say,
Yes.
oh, I want to be curious about coffee, but we never want to like ask the question. We always say curious because it sounds better than I don't know, right? But when you're trying to find your place, there's always going to be difficulty in the job. How do you differentiate between this is hard versus this is wrong?
I have no idea, honestly. I think one of the things that we talked about earlier is like being in competition gives you such a strange dynamic because on the one hand, people start assuming that you're very good at something and that gives you like this expert status because you've won some competitions. And that makes it even more difficult to admit that you don't know something. I've always had this weird love-hate relationship with not the competitions because I love competing, but winning them because that adds to this imposter syndrome that I carry, being able to admit that, I don't know that yet. I do think that I've learned to find strength in admitting that, I don't know something yet. Like I can look that up for you. I'm more than happy to say now that I'm more experienced in it during a training to say if someone asks me a question, every now and then you'll still have a bright student asking you something that you don't have the direct answer to. And now I feel confident enough to say, like, that is an excellent question. I'm going to look that up and I'm going to get back to you on that one. And I'll be excited because that means I'm going to learn something new as well, even after so many years. But when I just started out and you have all these insecurities and like, don't let anyone see that you have no idea what you're talking about yet, that just makes it incredibly difficult and you start standing in your own way so much.
That's not just something that I think baristas or trainers can learn from. It's also owners who are, the ultimate authority in a cafe often have a hard time admitting that they don't know something or that they need to learn something. And that for anybody is going to be just part of joining humanity. We don't
Yes.
know everything, and it's silly to pretend that we do. When you began in your career as a trainer, and this is something that I can really connect with as well, because I tried to be like a consultant in my early 20s. Like, what did I know? Just I was like some competition experience. I was enthusiastic and I was just going to like tell people what to do. But when you do have the answers today and you do know what to say to somebody, how do you answer differently than you did in the past based on just the fact that you've been through this journey of knowledge of self and admitting the things that you don't know? But when you do know and you give an answer to somebody, how do you do that in a different way than you did back then?
I think now you feel less the urge of trying to convince people. It's easier now to just sit back, listen to someone do their, say their things, and just trusting that their journey will happen for them the way it's supposed to. Like someone could have told me, and my mentor definitely tried to tell me that, there's a certain way that things will play out. You can't rush the process, which is such a cliche. And having gone through, several years of a process with ups and downs, I know from experience that you can't rush that. So it doesn't really matter what you say to a person at any point, because it just happens the way it's supposed to. And it's not always easy. And of course, you can offer advice and guidance if they ask for it. But I think most of the times people just want validation. And I think we tend to skip that a lot because we're so eager to give advice or to portray our own expertise. Like, this is what you should do. This is what you should look into. Try to do this and that. But I don't think that that's necessarily what people need if they're venting or if they're coming to you. I think we should be focusing more, and this is what I try to do myself more, is not jump straight to the solutions or to the advice, but more to the validation part. And I think that can be so healing and so empowering to people if they're struggling at a certain point.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, because there's a lot of insecurity that you just had gone through yourself in your career. You want people to work through that. How do you draw a line, or even is this even something that you have to concern yourself with as a mentor or a trainer, between, giving people advice that's helpful and validation? Because validation itself, if, for instance, you're saying you had the desire to prove yourself in your answers to others, which is a form of validation. Like, I really hope you all in this class see me as a coffee expert when I'm done just, bloviating about coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are now training somebody who is seeking validation, at what point does that turn into something where that their desire for validation is actually the same thing? It's going to hold them back.
I think the more vulnerable and the more myself I am, the more that invites other people to do the same. I think I heard this recently on one of your episodes. You talked about authenticity and vulnerability in the same sentence. And I think that is something that I try to really live by. If I'm open and vulnerable about not knowing everything, not having all the answers, but doing the best I can, then I think that will invite other people to feel safe and to invite them to be more themselves as well, making the whole atmosphere more relaxed. And I think that is a lot more required. That is circumstances that you need for people to grow and to learn anything, to absorb any kind of knowledge, whether it's coffee knowledge or, more of on a personal nature. But yeah, I think being more vulnerable myself about, I've always kind of resented the whole expert status that comes with the competitions, because, like I said, the pressure that adds, when I was started as a trainer, I was really focused on trying to convince people that I was the best in the room and that I was going to tell them how they should do it and they should trust me. And I was completely overcompensating for this. And somewhere over the years, I stopped doing that. I stopped trying so hard because I was losing so much energy during a training. That was just not sustainable. And somewhere before or after that burnout, I stopped trying so hard. And my shift changed really clearly from during a training from myself as a trainer, I'm going to show you how to do it, to you're going to try, I'm going to encourage, I'm going to be your coach on the sideline. I don't have to convince you that I can do the trick. Like, I'll show you if you want me to, but I don't have to convince you. Training is not about the trainer. And that is the thing that I found so much more joy in once I started realizing that. And people in the training as well, like students, you can just see them light up more. You can see them absorb your knowledge better, and you can just feed them the knowledge, but you can also help them grow as a person and see them grow in their confidence the moment you stop making the training about the trainer, start making it about them. Yeah, and just I found so much more joy from that moment on when I started realizing that it's not about me, it's about those students that I'm trying to empower.
Beautifully said. I think you're right on the money, because so many trainers, and those listening right now, just ask yourself, have you ever experienced this where at the end of a training, people are so impressed with you? They're like, wow, you're really good at latte art. So you're really good at explaining like all the different processes of coffee, but they're not really impressed with themselves. Like you said, they're not excited about the information, which is the whole point of it. At the end, it's sort of like this junk food validation, right? Like, they were so impressed. They must be impressed with my brand. So I did good by my roastery or my company that sent me out here. But they don't really walk away with any transferable skills other than being impressed with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no satisfaction to that for themselves at all. So all I want for people, and this is something I've always wanted, but just never been able to do in the beginning. I've always wanted to, after a training, that my students would be brave enough to start trying on their own, because you realize that there's only like 10 to 20% of your training that's going to stick, because it's a lot of information and there's, maybe some nerves there. So I was really intentional about what 20% of my information do I want to stick. And I just started cutting it back to, if they take one thing away from this training, it is the excitement to start trying on their own. Even if they forget everything else I've said, all the knowledge, all the tricks and tips and whatever, if they just come out of a training with the confidence to start practicing and experimenting and reading and asking questions, then that is successful training.
Yeah, agreed. And that, I think, neatly brings us to, when we're talking about joy, we're talking about positive results in the relationship between trainer and trainee, and just having great community around mutual learning in coffee. You've started or are about to launch something called the Happy Coffee Network. And I'm really interested. It sounds amazing, and I want to be a part of a Happy Coffee Network. Right? Love the name. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I'm glad you like the name. It's something that really captures the essence. I've learned to keep things as simple as possible, because there's already so much people overcomplicating things in our industry, sadly. And I just wanted to, basically, I wanted two things. I wanted to help as much people as possible brew better coffee, like from a trainer point of view, as a teacher. And I also want to make as much people as possible feel more confident to be that more vulnerable, more authentic person, so they can learn and grow better. And turns out that those two things are qualities that I learned that I strongly possess. So I figured I would put them to good use without having to have all the answers myself. I know that there's already a lot of great communities out there that I really enjoy myself. And some of them I feel confident to speak up in, and others not so much. I'm more of a onlooker and the one thing that I do like is bringing people together. Something that I've seen up close during my experience with World AeroPress Championships is that it has this unique way of bringing people together without a lot of pressure. And if you do that, if you take the pressure away of like having a certain skill level, of having a certain accomplishment in your career, like whether you're a home barista or you're like a super experienced barista, everyone has a shot at competing and winning World AeroPress Championship. If you put those kind of people just together in a room and you throw in some music and potentially, some things to learn, but also some fun times, there's just something magical that happens that just really sparks so much joy and brings so much energy to a room. And that is just something that we can use so much more of. I know that we have some amazing events. There's lots of our throwdowns that I never participated in one because I always had this sense that I need to have a certain level or I should be better to be part of that. And that is something that has kept me back for a lot of times. And I know that, once I started communicating this, I found a lot of people who had the same feeling, like you have to have a certain level of coffee before you belong. And that just confused me and made me feel really sad. So I basically just wanted to make a place where that isn't a factor. Yes, coffee is our connection. It is the glue that keeps us together. It's like a book club. You enjoy reading. Everyone likes different kinds of books. That's okay. But it's fun to get together and talk about what you've been reading and just discuss and learn from each other. And you don't have to get smarter. You don't have to have a certain level. But coincidentally, if you get together and you talk and you share experiences and knowledge, you will get smarter in the process. So you will get better in brewing coffee. It's almost inevitable because you get inspired and you start experimenting people, especially if it comes from this place of like vulnerability and safety of not having the answers. Hopefully that will encourage a lot of people to keep experimenting and learning and growing, but in a super safe environment where there's just a bunch of people cheering you on, encouraging you. And it's funny that even though it's not even launched yet, but I have this small group of, I call them my founding members. They're just a group of people that I know through my career in coffee, and some of them even just through social media that I build a relationship with, who are just on the same page. And I put them together in a WhatsApp group. We're literally nothing more than a WhatsApp group right now. But the amount of responsibility that they're taking into bringing this project to life, because they feel just as strongly as me that this place needs to exist in our little, corner that the coffee industry is, it's just heartwarming. And it's, I think that a lot of people, it's definitely not going to be for everyone, but I do believe that there's plenty of people out there who could use a place where they feel, supported, where they like to meet new people, where they can keep learning, find resources, but also connect with other people at events, but at such a low-key, low-pressure, safe environment where, there's just no pressure of having to be better or at a different stage than where you are. I hope that really empowers a lot of people. Yeah, so basically, I want, this Happy Coffee Network to be a place where baristas can safely network, learn from each other. I mostly want it to be a support system, like a place of encouragement, of motivation. And, if that turns into potentially some career advancement because you learn and you grow and you meet new people, that's great as well. But as long as it's, as long as everyone can be their own person and be their authentic self, then I think we're adding something good to the world, no matter how small. And even if we don't, even if there's only 3 people in the world who are interested in this, I think it's valuable and it has a place. Yeah, it doesn't have to be big.
That's it. It has a place. And that's, WBC and other competitions that are out there all over the world. There's different focal points that they have. And there's different communities with, some communities are very science oriented, right? People are interested in common things. And so building a whole variety of different organizations that focus on different things is definitely needed, right? Because we have a diverse industry with a lot of different needs. And this is a very universal need for people to feel that excitement. And yes, when you cheer each other on, right, you are cheering them on in their efforts to do a thing or to progress in their career or to celebrate, the victories that they have currently in coffee and otherwise. And so ultimately it feels like we need this counterbalance to what can easily become just a very stodgy community that is no one's having any fun, but technically the coffee tastes really great.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. But everyone was so focused on brewing that perfect cup of coffee that we stopped having some fun and enjoy it in the process, which is sad because then I think you're moving away from what drew us to the coffee industry in the first place. Because I don't think anyone gets excited about the coffee industry in the beginning because of I couldn't judge a cup of coffee based on quality when I started as a barista. Like that grew in the process. So it's not the thing that got me into coffee. What got me into coffee was the enthusiasm of a coffee professional, of a barista that, made my double espresso every day. And he was just really enthusiastic about describing the two different blends they had on the grinder that day. And I just thought, dude, if you like your job so much at 8 a.m., I need to get me some of that. I didn't taste the difference between the two blends. I didn't even care. I just wanted what he did because he seemed so enthusiastic about it. And I think that the more advanced you are in your career, the more people tend to lose that, as you said at the beginning. And I think that is just something that makes me feel very rebellious. And the more serious people become, the more I feel this need of becoming the jokester in the room. Like, okay, can we please just all it's maybe that's the one thing that was really helpful to me during competition season as well, because I've done a couple of them. I'm married to a police officer. So I would come home from a full day of training preparing for the WBC in 2019, just pulling shots after shots and describing them and zooming in on these tiny details as you do when you're, preparing for a WBC. And I'd come home completely frustrated because I wasn't able to pull one decent shot the whole day. And then I'd ask my husband. So after venting for like 2 hours, I was like, how was your day, honey? And he was like, well, different kind of day. And then he would come up with this, like whatever his day was, completely different order of things. And that really kept putting things in perspective for me. And I feel like sometimes once we get better at something, we start taking it so seriously, and at the same time start taking ourselves so seriously that we forget that at the end of the day, we're making coffee.
Right.
It feels like blasphemy to say it, especially on this podcast, but sometimes we just need to realize that also just to kind of take that pressure off our shoulders. Yes, we're trying to change the world, idealistically improving circumstances for coffee producers. And I'm all for that. Like that is amazing about this industry as well. But every now and then, I think it's okay to realize that, it's fine to every now and then just enjoy a mediocre cup of coffee. Like that's fine. You can allow yourself to do that.
Mm-hmm. As a parent, I have way more joyful coffee moments with mediocrity than I used to.
Yes. Parenthood does that. I agree. Yeah. Just being able to drink it hot is just a pleasure. I don't even care how it tastes as long as I get to enjoy it hot.
Truth. That is so true. I think also if people feel like there is this black and white scenario where you're either having fun and not doing good work, or you're doing good work and not having fun, that's not the point.
I know. This is something I really reckon, especially like what I mentioned, like the moment I started becoming successful in competitions, I kept feeling this pressure of like, so people assumed that I'm really serious. And it's this strange combination of like the way I present myself on Instagram, which is 100% the way I am in real life as well. When people come up to me at like a trade show, for instance, last year in Milan at World of Coffee, people were coming up to me for a chat because they recognized me from my social media, which was weird in itself. And then someone said like, oh, it's so funny because you're like exactly the way you are on social media. I'm like, yes. That's a good thing, right? Like I thought that was such a great compliment, but people seem surprised because you've won competitions. So surely you cannot be approachable anymore, and let alone admit that you don't know everything. I mean, as much as I love the platform that these championship titles have given me, it's also a little bit of a burden to me because then sometimes people tend to think that you have everything figured out. And that is the pressure that I do not need in my life.
Oh, right. Right. And that's exactly the pressure that you put on yourself.
Exactly.
And so now you're fighting against that. And also it's interesting because people would say, well, one day I want to be a quote unquote influencer, and that's how I'm going to make a difference in the world. And realizing that, we're talking about platforms like I have a podcast and you've got your channels and media that you do. But I think it's really true that just the way that that barista influenced your life, there's a lot of anonymous influencers out there just who demonstrate through their life lived consistently within these virtues that you've been describing. They're the cause of so much positive change in the industry. They just don't have metrics that are tracked. There's no spreadsheet that shows them that. It's just a life well lived consistently according to these values will exponentially change the industry. So you don't need the title. You don't even need the platform, really. You just need to be consistent and live it out in your career, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I've gathered a group of people that are exactly like me, like that want the same thing for our industry, but they just don't have the same platform as me because of the competitions. But now that we're, getting together and trying to get this network off the ground, you can really see the value of if you put these kind of people together, like, the safety in numbers kind of thing, and also the strength that comes in these numbers. That makes me so excited to see, like, if we add to those numbers, if we find more people that are enthusiastic about this, then, I think the sky is the limit, like the amount of things that we can accomplish together if you come from such a encouraging, positive place. I think that the potential is huge for what we could achieve.
Let me ask you then, kind of as we wrap up here, we all come from different backgrounds and we have this opportunity within our companies and the people who we do have relationship with. What can we do to be more effective in building a happier coffee network where we are?
I think that really comes down to some gentle encouragement. Like, if you encourage too much or if you push too much, then people start like backing up as well because they'll start feeling that as pressure. So some gentle encouragement, I think we all need at a certain point in our life, especially if we're about to do something that feels scary to us, that is like slightly outside of our comfort zone. For instance, competing or, starting a new business or even just taking a training about a topic that scares you. It's nice to have someone to like give you that gentle nudge. Validation is super important. Like, it's okay to be scared. I'm scared all the time about the things that I'm doing, about the projects that I try to do. I have no idea if I'm an entrepreneur or whatever that means. So having someone say like it's okay that this is scary. It's a scary world, and growing is scary, and being vulnerable is scary, and having those feelings validated can be just that little nudge that we need. And then the biggest one, I think, is celebrating successes together, having people to, once you do accomplish that, once you tried, even if you failed, just celebrate the fact that you tried. And if it's successful, even better. If you can celebrate successes together, I think that is, the best way to keep motivated to keep on doing.
Wonderful. Yes, celebrate, come together, celebrate each other's successes. I just love that. And there's so many opportunities if we just pay attention and we're curious. And
Yeah.
yes, I love it. So where can we go to learn more about, like, well, first to stay in contact with you and the great content that you put out, and then also how can we learn more about the Happy Coffee Network?
We're going to be sharing most of the information through my Instagram, Wendelien Drinks Coffee. And once the website is launched on the 18th of March, we'll be doing that during a live event or kickoff event. If because of the time zone you can't attend, you can also just buy a ticket and then we'll send you the recording of the champagne popping moment. For after the 18th, the website will be open to registration to anyone who wants to. So the happycoffeenetwork.com will be open to the public, and you can register and see what the website is all about, meet the people who are already member, join the discussion forums, find the e-courses. Together we'll set up some great online and offline events. I'm hoping that, for instance, in Athens, World of Coffee, that is in June, I get to meet up with as many of the network members as possible, just for, drinks and going around the trade show floor, things like that. Yeah, that's something I'm super, super excited about.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to see this thing launch and really happy, in fact, to have talked with you today. It's really been a joy, and I'm grateful for the work you've done. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute life goal.
Thank you, Wendelien.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. As I said in the beginning, there's a lot here that I think is going to be relatable no matter where you are in your coffee journey. And one of the unique things about Wendelien, this insistence and die-hard pursuit of joy and finding a way to create a platform and an avenue for other people to find that joy through the way that she presents content, the way that she views her own career, and now the founding of the Happy Coffee Network. And I am just really grateful to have gotten the chance to present this worldview towards coffee, because I think it's the kind of thing that every single one of us can implement right now in our careers where we are. You could be really close to burnout. You could be just kind of flirting with it a little bit. But if you take a page from Wendelien's playbook here and learn from her story, I think you could find yourself in a better place and actually find happiness in the process. And so a huge thank you to Wendelien for joining us on Keys to the Shop. What an honor. And if you are interested in learning more about the Happy Coffee Network and what Wendelien is up to on her social accounts, you can go and follow her first on the main social account, Wendelien Drinks Coffee, at Wendelien Drinks Coffee. And then finally, to stay up to date with the launch of the Happy Coffee Network, you can go to the website, thehappycoffeenetwork.com, and follow them on Instagram at the Happy Coffee Network. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for me about today's episode or any other episode of the show, go ahead and email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. And that's also where you can reach out if you're interested in working one-on-one with me for consultation and coaching. Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. I want to let you know that coming up very shortly is Coffee Fest, the first show of 2023. It's about to happen in New York City, March 5th through the 7th, and I'm really excited for this. We have got a great competition at the Coffee Fest. Latte Art World Championship Open is really exciting. And then we also have, of course, the trade show where you get to interact with vendors from all over the industry who have syrups, they have coffees, they have cups, roasteries, and all sorts of things that will help get your coffee bar stocked with the best stuff. Not only this, but one of the main things about Coffee Fest is the educational content. I've been giving lectures for a very long time at Coffee Fest, and I am just one of many, many people that cover a variety of subjects for free or accessibly priced trainings, workshops, panel discussions, and all sorts of lectures that will help equip you with financial information, with management and leadership, with barista skills, and so forth. And it's really a dynamic place where the community gathers, we encourage one another, we grow together, and we build great coffee businesses and a great coffee industry as a result. So 30 years, that's how long Coffee Fest has been doing this. And I really hope to see you at one of these shows. Go to coffeefest.com to learn more about the upcoming shows this year. Of course, I said New York. Then we've got Louisville, Kentucky. We then have Anaheim, California, and finally Orlando, Florida. Coffeefest.com is where you can learn all about this. I would encourage you to get yourself and your team signed up ASAP. Again, for more information and to get yourself and your team signed up today, go to coffeefest.com. You can also use the code KEYS, KEYS, to get 50% off your registration fee. So I forgot to mention that there, but if you've come this far in the episode, you get the information. The code KEYS will get you 50% off 2023 shows, registering yourself and your team over at coffeefest.com. And with that, that is the end of our show today. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join me. I hope that everything that you've heard today, as you have been inspired by it and apply it to your life, will bring happiness to your career and to your coffee experiences. Again, thank you very much to Wendelien for joining us on the show. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.